Moving forward, another story preceding the advent of revelation illustrates Prophet Muhammad's character. This narrative involves Zayd, a member of the Adnani branch of the Arabs from Yemen. Zayd's parents hailed from different Yemeni tribes with a tumultuous relationship. During one such conflict, Zayd's mother took him to her tribe, only for a skirmish to erupt between her tribe and her husband's tribe. In a retaliatory act, Zayd's maternal relatives kidnapped him, aiming to avenge themselves against his father's tribe. Zayd, then around 7 or 8 years old, was sold into slavery, reminiscent of Prophet Yusuf's story. His captors sold him at one of the grand fairs following the Hajj season for 400 dirhams. He was purchased by Hakim ibn Hizam, Khadijah's nephew, who had been tasked with finding a young servant for her. This series of events, though rooted in Jahiliyyah customs, ultimately positioned Zayd in a place of significant future importance. The boy is acquired for a considerable sum and subsequently brought to Khadijah's residence, where he is assigned the role of a servant. This servant, known as Zayd, later becomes part of Khadijah's household. Upon her marriage to the Prophet Muhammad, she presents Zayd to him as part of her nuptial gifts. Thus, Zayd assumes the position of a servant to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. These events transpire significantly before the emergence of Islam. Zayd's father, Harithah, is engaged in a desperate search for his son. In a scenario akin to the narrative of Prophet Yusuf, Harithah is engulfed by sorrow and anguish, disseminating news of his son's disappearance across the region. He meticulously details his son's physical characteristics, hoping that someone might identify him. During a Hajj season in the era of Jahiliyyah, a Yemeni man notices Zayd and recognizes his distinctive features. Suspecting that this could be the child Harithah is seeking, he informs Harithah upon returning to Yemen. Harithah discovers that his son is in Mecca, enslaved by one of the grandsons of Abdul Muttalib. Elated, Harithah amasses all the money he can and, accompanied by his brother, journeys to Mecca. Following their arrival, they seek Prophet Muhammad in the Haram. As Harithah approaches the Prophet, he offers abundant praise, acknowledging his noble lineage and the divine blessings he has received. Even though Prophet Muhammad has not yet become a prophet, Harithah recognizes his integrity and noble character. He proceeds to recount his predicament, explaining how his son Zayd was unjustly abducted and sold into slavery. Expressing his readiness to pay any ransom for his son's return, Harithah implores for compassion, as their resources are limited. During the anarchic period of Jahiliyyah, with no courts or legal avenues available, power resided with the mightiest, necessitating direct negotiation. The Prophet Muhammad listens attentively and then proposes a solution. He suggests that Zayd should determine his own destiny. Should Zayd decide to return with his father, he will do so without the need for any ransom. Conversely, if Zayd opts to remain with Prophet Muhammad, he cannot be sent away. Harithah and his brother are elated by this magnanimous offer, readily accepting and conveying their profound gratitude. The Prophet summons Zayd, who is approximately 25 years old by then, having spent a decade with the Prophet and Khadijah. The Prophet Muhammad inquired of Zayd, "Do you recognize these men?" Zayd responded affirmatively, identifying them as his father and uncle. The Prophet then explained that they had come to request Zayd's return and left the decision to Zayd himself. He offered Zayd the choice to either go back with his father and uncle or to remain with him. In this poignant moment, we discern the Prophet's deep affection and paternal love for Zayd. Despite the brevity of the interaction, it is evident that the Prophet was reluctant to part with Zayd. The Prophet, transcending the norms of Jahiliyyah, acknowledged the moral claim of Zayd's family. Zayd was not born a slave and should not remain one. Thus, he offered Zayd the choice, emphasizing his commitment to moral rectitude. Presented with the choice, Zayd ultimately decides to remain with Prophet Muhammad, showcasing his profound loyalty and affection. Instantaneously, Zayd expressed his determined loyalty, declaring that he could never choose anyone over the Prophet. He affirmed, "You are to me more than a father and an uncle combined." This declaration underscored an extraordinary bond, as it is uncommon for an individual to prioritize someone over their biological father, especially someone who is not a blood relative. Even though Zayd was only 7 or 8 years old when abducted, he retained clear memories of his father. Yet, his profound attachment to the Prophet outweighed his familial bonds. This unparalleled loyalty is reflective of the Prophet's exceptional character and the spiritual connection he fostered. Zayd's father, astonished and dismayed, questioned his son's decision. "Have you gone mad? You choose to remain a slave in a foreign land rather than return to your own tribe and family." He highlighted the lack of rights, honor, and protection associated with slavery. Despite this, Zayd stood firm, asserting that his experiences with the Prophet had left an indelible impression on him, making it impossible for him to choose otherwise. Moved by Zayd's unwavering devotion, the Prophet Muhammad led him to the Kaaba and made a public declaration. He announced to the people of Mecca that Zayd was now a free man and that he had adopted him as his son. From that moment, Zayd would be known as Zayd ibn Muhammad, with the rights of inheritance as a son. This gesture was intended to reassure Zayd's father and uncle, ensuring them that Zayd was no longer a slave but a respected member of the Quraysh tribe, thus restoring their peace of mind. Thus, the Prophet Muhammad adopted Zayd ibn Harithah, who was subsequently known as Zayd ibn Muhammad. Reflecting on Zayd's identity, Ibn Umar observed that the only name known to them was Zayd ibn Muhammad until the revelation of Surah al-Ahzab, verse 5, which occurred about 30 years later during the Medinan period. This Quranic verse directed believers to use the names of individuals' fathers, prompting the Prophet to restore Zayd's original name, Zayd ibn Harithah. According to early Islamic scholars such as al-Shihab, Zayd was one of the earliest converts to Islam. There are varying accounts about the first convert, with names like Khadijah, Abu Bakr, Zayd, and Ali being mentioned. However, Zayd's early acceptance of Islam is widely recognized. His profound affection for the Prophet Muhammad was evident even before the advent of Islam. In the pre-Islamic era, Zayd married Ayman, who had cared for the Prophet Muhammad following the death of his mother, Amina. Although Ayman was not a wet nurse, she provided maternal care to the Prophet. Later, she married Zayd, despite the age difference between them. Their union produced a son, Usama ibn Zayd, who was born in the Prophet's household. Usama was highly esteemed among the Sahaba for his close relationship with the Prophet, who held him in deep affection. The Prophet's adoption and emancipation of Zayd significantly enhanced his status. To further integrate Zayd into the Quraysh lineage, the Prophet encouraged him to marry his cousin, Zainab bint Jahsh. Although this marriage eventually ended in divorce, it underscored the Prophet's intention to elevate Zayd's social standing. Allah later commanded the Prophet to marry Zainab, a unique instance where the marriage contract was established by divine decree, obviating the need for witnesses. Throughout his life, Zayd held a prominent role within the Muslim community. He was appointed as the commander of numerous expeditions by the Prophet, reflecting his esteemed position. Ultimately, Zayd met his martyrdom in the Battle of Mu'tah, a pivotal conflict between the early Muslims and Byzantine forces. This battle underscored Zayd's unwavering loyalty and the high regard in which he was held by both the Prophet Muhammad and the early Muslim community. The Prophet Muhammad did not personally participate in the Battle of Mu'tah but dispatched one of the largest Muslim contingents assembled after the conquest of Mecca. He appointed Zayd ibn Harithah as the commander, a significant decision given the anticipated severity of the conflict. The Prophet instructed that if Zayd fell, his cousin Ja'far ibn Abi Talib would take over, followed by Abdullah ibn Rawahah if Ja'far also fell. Tragically, all three leaders were martyred in the battle, creating a leadership vacuum. Khalid ibn al-Walid, a recent convert to Islam, was then chosen by the army to assume command, despite having joined their ranks only a month earlier. Khalid's decisive leadership during this critical juncture solidified his reputation, earning him the title, Saifullah, the Sword of Allah, from the Prophet upon his return. The Battle of Mu'tah was a profoundly sorrowful episode for the Prophet, who mourned the loss of his beloved companions, including Zayd, Ja'far, and Abdullah. This grief was reflected in a Quranic revelation commemorating their sacrifice, though it is no longer recited today. Following Zayd's martyrdom, the Prophet appointed his young son Usama to lead a subsequent military expedition against the Romans. However, the Prophet passed away before Usama's army could depart Medina, leading to a dispute between Abu Bakr and Umar. Umar argued against sending the young Usama, but Abu Bakr staunchly upheld the Prophet's choice, refusing to appoint anyone else in his stead. Notably, Zayd ibn Harithah is the only companion mentioned by name in the Quran, a distinction that underscores the profound affection the Prophet held for him. Some companions speculated that had Zayd survived the Prophet, he might have been chosen as the Caliph, highlighting the deep respect he commanded. In a revealing incident, Abdullah ibn Umar questioned his father, Caliph Umar, about the higher stipend allocated to Usama ibn Zayd compared to his own. Umar candidly replied that Usama was more beloved to the Prophet than Abdullah was, and Zayd was more cherished by the Prophet than Umar himself. This episode underscores the profound honesty and recognition of the special bond Zayd and his family shared with the Prophet. The decision of Zayd to choose the Prophet over his biological father and uncle is a testament to their extraordinary bond. Even before the revelation, Zayd's declaration that he could never choose anyone over the Prophet speaks volumes about the Prophet's character and the deep personal connections he fostered. This singular act reveals more about the Prophet's exceptional nature than numerous anecdotes, illustrating his unparalleled ability to inspire loyalty and love. These early incidents set the stage for the Prophet's life and mission, indicating the profound impact he had even before the formal revelation of Islam. The safeguarding of the Kaaba during the eras of Abdul Muttalib provided early indications of a forthcoming prophetic revelation. Various narratives, including Salman al-Farsi, indicated an anticipation of transformative change. These accounts, especially the detailed narratives from Aisha, shed light on the prelude to the revelation. Aisha, though not an eyewitness, narrated these events with remarkable precision, reflecting the intimate conversations she had with the Prophet Muhammad about his early life. Aisha's extensive narration, found in Sahih Bukhari, provides a vivid portrayal of the initiation of the revelation. This hadith, the fifth in Bukhari's compilation, describes how the Prophet Muhammad would retreat to the cave of Hira on Jabal al-Nur. This cave, essentially a fissure with openings at the front and back, is uniquely oriented to face the Kaaba, offering a tranquil setting for contemplation. Historical records suggest that Abdul Muttalib also utilized this cave for meditation. During these retreats, the Prophet would take provisions and spend several nights in solitude, returning to Khadijah only when necessary. It was during these periods of seclusion, in his 40th year, that the Prophet began experiencing extraordinary phenomena. In narrations found in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet recounted how he would hear rocks and stones greeting him with salam. These occurrences, which he later recognized as part of his divine mission, included a particular rock in Mecca that consistently greeted him. Moreover, the Prophet began to experience vivid dreams that accurately foretold the events of the following day. These dreams, described as clear as the dawn, marked the beginning of his prophetic experiences. The convergence of these signs and experiences underscored the profound spiritual preparation preceding the formal revelation of Islam. These early incidents not only set the stage for the Prophet's mission but also highlighted the unique nature of his prophetic journey. The Prophet Muhammad began to understand that his dreams were prophetic, accurately foreshadowing events that would transpire the following day. He shared this with Khadijah, noting that each vision came to pass in reality. Demonstrating her wisdom and maturity, Khadijah reassured him, interpreting these dreams as a positive sign from Allah. This period of nightly prophetic dreams endured for 6 months, as recorded in Sahih Bukhari. It is well documented that the Quranic revelation began in Ramadan. Consequently, this 6-month period of prophetic dreams commenced in Rabi' al-Awwal. Thus, for half a year leading up to Ramadan, the Prophet had nightly visions foretelling the next day's events. Given that his prophethood lasted 23 years, the Prophet himself affirmed that the only remaining aspect of prophethood is good dreams, which constitute 1/46 of prophethood, highlighting the precise fulfillment of this prophetic proportion. In Islamic thought, dreams are classified into 3 categories: those from Allah, which are positive and often predictive; those from Shaitan, which are nightmares intended to instill fear; and those from personal imagination, influenced by daily thoughts and emotions. Dreams from Allah bring good news and clarity, often requiring interpretation if symbolic, but never induce fear. Nightmares, on the other hand, are Shaitan's attempts to frighten and should be disregarded. Dreams originating from personal imagination are typically mundane and quickly forgotten, reflecting individual preoccupations. For 6 months, the Prophet experienced these true dreams, which served as preparation for the significant events ahead. This period also included supernatural occurrences, such as rocks and stones greeting him with salam. These phenomena had dual purposes, indicating to the prophet the extraordinary transformation he was undergoing and providing essential spiritual and psychological preparation for his prophetic mission. Scholars suggest that the role of a prophet necessitates a preparatory phase, during which the prophet was spiritually and psychologically elevated. Although the specifics of this transformation remain beyond human understanding, these experiences signified a distinct preparatory phase for the monumental revelation he was destined to receive. These beings began communicating with him, suggesting that the Prophet Muhammad was undergoing a comprehensive psychological, mental, and spiritual preparation for the imminent revelation. This preparatory phase, lasting 6 months, saw the Prophet increasingly withdraw from society to dedicate more time to worshipping Allah. While Islamic teachings endorse moments of solitude and reflection, it is not a sunnah to permanently isolate oneself from society, as the Prophet did before the revelation. Once the revelation began, he no longer engaged in prolonged seclusion. Certain groups interpret the Prophet's pre-revelation solitude as a call to retreat into caves or secluded rooms for extended meditation and contemplation. However, this practice was specific to the pre-revelation period. After the revelation commenced, the Prophet never returned to such isolation. Genuine solitude, as recommended by the Prophet, involves praying at night when others are asleep. The Quran states that the true servants of Allah are those who worship during the night. Various narrations mention that during the final 10 days of Ramadan, the Prophet experienced supernatural phenomena. On a Saturday, he saw a light and heard a sound, but found nothing upon investigation. The same phenomena occurred on Sunday. Finally, on Monday, the angel Gabriel appeared to him, marking the beginning of the revelation. It is well documented that the revelation started on a Monday during the last 10 days of Ramadan. The Prophet himself affirmed that he was born on a Monday and that the revelation also began on a Monday. The renowned incident of the revelation commenced with the Prophet's encounter with Jibreel. When the Prophet was sitting in the cave of Hira, Jibreel appeared and commanded him to read. The Prophet, taken aback, responded that he could not read. Jibreel then squeezed him so tightly that the Prophet feared he might lose consciousness. This physical encounter, repeated 3 times, underscored the gravity and reality of the experience. Scholars suggest that this intense squeezing was meant to convey the seriousness of the message and to affirm the physical reality of the revelation. The experience was profoundly intense, both physically and spiritually, indicating the weight of the prophetic mission. This initial encounter with Jibreel was a significant milestone, marking the commencement of the Quranic revelation, which would continue for the next 23 years, shaping the course of history and guiding humanity towards spiritual enlightenment. The described experiences were of profound intensity, illustrating the considerable gravity of the impending revelation. Scholars have interpreted Gabriel 3 squeezes as symbolic of the significant trials that the Prophet Muhammad would face. Each trial appeared nearly insurmountable but was mitigated by divine intervention, ensuring the Prophet's perseverance. These trials included the social boycott during which Muslims experienced severe deprivation for 2.5 years, an assassination attempt followed by the Hijra migration, and the Battle of Uhud, where the Prophet sustained serious injuries and narrowly evaded capture. In the context of revelation, the Arabic term, Iqra, carries dual meanings: to read from a physical text and to recite from memory. Initially, the Prophet Muhammad understood this command as a directive to read from a written source, which he could not do due to his illiteracy. However, Jibreel's instruction was to recite based on divine inspiration, establishing that the Prophet's recitations would be directly imparted by Allah rather than derived from textual sources. The initial verse revealed, Iqra bismi rabbika, underscores the imperative to recite in the name of Allah, signifying a direct divine connection in the act of revelation. This verse highlights that the knowledge conveyed would be comprehensive and divinely guided, surpassing the need for physical texts. Furthermore, the phrase, Iqra bismi rabbika, emphasizes the ongoing nature of recitation, reinforcing the Prophet's role in perpetually communicating the divine message. The Creator, who fashioned all things, including humanity from a mere clinging substance, now chose to communicate with mankind through the prophet. This profound connection between creation and revelation illustrates the divine origin of the message and the prophet's unique role as the conduit for this divine communication. The repeated injunction to Iqra signifies not only the significance of recitation but also the continuous and enduring nature of the prophet's mission to disseminate the Quranic message. The second aspect pertains to the acquisition of worldly knowledge. Initially, the command to recite Iqra emphasizes direct divine inspiration, while the subsequent directive underscores the importance of reading and learning through written texts. This command encourages the pursuit of knowledge acquired from human efforts, acknowledging that even this knowledge is a divine gift from Allah, who endowed humanity with the ability to write. Without Allah's intervention, humanity would remain ignorant of such capabilities. This directive highlights the dual nature of knowledge, religious and secular. Religious knowledge is portrayed as divinely inspired, whereas secular knowledge, although the result of human endeavor, is ultimately granted by Allah. This is particularly noteworthy given that the revelation was addressed to a predominantly illiterate society. In Mecca, literacy was scarce, with perhaps only a handful of individuals possessing the ability to read and write. The Arabic script of the time was rudimentary and lacked the complexity of modern script. The command to seek knowledge had a profound impact on the subsequent development of Islamic civilization. Within a century of this revelation, Muslims had risen to become a major intellectual and cultural force. Their advancements in fields such as medicine, science, chemistry, engineering, and law attracted scholars from Europe. Historical evidence reveals that individuals from regions that are now modern-day England, Italy, and France traveled to Islamic lands, including Andalusia and North Africa, to study and later disseminate their knowledge in their own countries. This historical trajectory underscores the effectiveness of the divine encouragement to pursue and expand knowledge. Allah's command facilitated the flourishing of intellectual and scientific progress. The concept of writing, which Allah mentions in this revelation, represents a significant human achievement, transforming spoken words into written text, thereby preserving and transmitting knowledge. The skill of writing, imparted to Prophet Idris, exemplifies a fundamental advancement made possible by divine instruction. Similarly, Allah's teaching of Adam to speak distinguishes humanity from animals. The transmission of knowledge, whether related to writing, speech, or technological skills, is rooted in divine instruction. These foundational teachings enabled subsequent discoveries and advancements. Therefore, every intellectual achievement is ultimately attributed to Allah's endowment of wisdom and capability. The significance of the initial revelation lies in its introduction of a direct divine communication through the Quran. This revelation marks the beginning of a continuous divine guidance for humanity, encapsulated in the act of recitation, which remains central to the Quranic message. The term, recite, encompasses both the act of reading from a written text and the oral recitation from memory, reflecting its dual significance in the context of the Quran. This holy book is uniquely preserved through both memorization and written documentation, setting it apart from other religious texts. The Quran's preservation in both forms, complete memorization and meticulous recording, demonstrates its unparalleled significance in religious history. The significance of the initial verses of the Quran often goes unexamined by many Muslims. Understanding why Allah chose to begin the Quranic revelation with these specific verses reveals their profound implications. The primary purpose of these verses is to establish a direct, divine communication with all of humanity. Returning to the narrative, upon encountering the divine revelation, the Prophet Muhammad hurriedly sought the comfort of his wife, Khadijah, his heart racing with fear. This reaction vividly illustrates the Prophet's shock and disbelief, as he was unprepared for such a powerful encounter with Gabriel, who appeared in a grand and overwhelming manner. The intensity of this experience left the Prophet visibly shaken, seeking refuge and solace in Khadijah's presence. This episode highlights the Prophet's human vulnerability and underscores that his prophetic mission was not premeditated. Unlike certain other historical figures who fabricated grand narratives of prophecy, the Prophet Muhammad's response was marked by genuine fear and confusion. He turned to Khadijah, exemplifying the profound trust and reliance he had on her. Khadija's immediate and compassionate response provided essential emotional support, helping to calm the Prophet's fears. Her understanding and reassurance were crucial in alleviating his anxiety. She listened attentively to his account of the revelation and his subsequent worries, reinforcing her belief in his integrity and divine favor. The expression, "I am scared for myself," as documented in Bukhari, has been subject to various interpretations. The Prophet's fear may have been related to concerns for his own life during the overwhelming experience or apprehensions about losing his sanity due to witnessing extraordinary visions. Both interpretations are considered valid and do not imply any sacrilegious connotations, reflecting his sincere concern for his own well-being. Khadija's reassurance, rooted in her deep faith, emphasized that Allah would not allow harm or disgrace to befall the Prophet. She recognized his virtuous character, including his kindness, support for his family, generosity, and hospitality. Her affirmation that Allah rewards righteousness with protection and blessings illustrates a fundamental principle of divine justice. This reassurance from Khadija, based on her pure and sincere belief, encapsulates a fundamental truth: Allah's favor is aligned with one's moral integrity and good deeds. This narrative underscores the rationale behind Allah's choice of Khadija as a support for the Prophet Muhammad. She played a crucial role in providing solace and reassurance during his distress, reflecting her integral position in his life. Sensing that the occurrence might bear connections to Judaic or Christian traditions, Khadija proceeded to seek the advice of Waraka bin Nawfal, her aged cousin who was revered for his profound understanding of diverse religious doctrines. Waraka, known for his extensive travels and exposure to diverse religious practices, held a syncretic belief system incorporating elements from both Judaism and Christianity. According to a narration in Bukhari, Waraka's knowledge was not confined to traditional Jewish or Christian doctrines. Rather, he had assimilated aspects of both, acknowledging the legitimacy of their prophets while not fully adhering to their specific teachings. His familiarity with Hebrew scriptures and his Christian background positioned him as a well-versed, albeit unorthodox, religious scholar in Mecca. As Waraka evaluated the Prophet's account, he demonstrated considerable enthusiasm and insight, recognizing the angelic figure as the same divine messenger who had visited previous prophets. Waraka's reference to the angel as the keeper of secrets suggested that he saw the Prophet Muhammad's mission as analogous to that of Moses rather than Jesus. This interpretation was informed by the understanding that Moses, like Prophet Muhammad, faced political as well as prophetic challenges, unlike Jesus, who was more focused on spiritual teachings. Waraka's reflection on the Prophet's impending hardships, sarcasm, persecution, and expulsion mirrored the trials experienced by past prophets. His wish to have been younger to assist the Prophet highlighted the anticipated adversities the Prophet would confront. Waraka's lamentation regarding his own limitations in aiding the Prophet further emphasized the gravity of the Prophet's future struggles. Waraka passed away soon after this encounter. Despite his brief involvement, he was among the earliest individuals to recognize the Prophet's divine mission. Subsequent accounts describe Waraka as having been honored in the afterlife, attired in white robes and residing in paradise, thus affirming his early acceptance of Islam. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, recounted that after his initial encounter with Gabriel, there was a significant period during which he did not receive any revelations. Scholars have varied in their estimates of this interval, with some suggesting it lasted up to 6 months, while others propose a period ranging from 3 months to a year. The more extended durations are generally considered less reliable. During this hiatus, the Prophet returned to a semblance of normal life. He later described an event, as narrated in Bukhari, where he once again saw Gabriel, this time seated on a celestial throne between the heavens and the earth. This vision caused him considerable agitation and palpitations, prompting him to seek refuge with Khadija, his wife. Gabriel's second revelation included the command, "O you who is wrapped up in garments, arise and warn." This directive signifies a profound call to action, urging the Prophet to abandon his previous state of passive seclusion and actively engage in his prophetic mission. The instructions underscored the importance of glorifying Allah, drawing strength from Him, and maintaining personal purity, both physically and morally. The Prophet was advised to reject idolatry, refrain from material greed, and perform his deeds solely for Allah's sake, anticipating his reward rather than seeking human favor. This revelation thus outlined the Prophet's responsibilities in conveying Allah's message while upholding personal integrity and devotion.